I was going to start this by saying long time no see, and then it dawned on me, if you've only just signed up for this YouTube channel, podcast or mailing list, this will be the first time you've seen my face or heard my voice. If, on the other hand, you've been with me since last year, it is long time no see, so welcome back. It dawned on me as well that I thought to myself when I first launched this a year ago that I never wanted to be one of those people who would be bombarding you with emails and shows and things like that, but I've probably taken it to the other extreme and taken the piss a little bit. So everything's coming back. The YouTube shows, the podcasts are coming back. This episode is just to let you know, if you were with me last year and you wondered where I've been for the last 12 months, this is to give you that summary. If you are new, or if you were with me last year and you couldn't give a shit where I've been for the last 12 months, then skip this episode. We will be back to regular programming in the next one. Back to all of the stuff, the type of stuff we were talking about last year. Where I've actually been, the short version for most of that time, is writing a book that's about to come out. So the new shows, the episodes that are to come, are going to be built around that book. If we go right the way back to the last episode, it's really funny for me when I look back now and think, when did I record that last show and where was I in my life then and what was going on? What basically happened after that was, as I'd launched this show and started sharing all this stuff with you, at the same time I'd started coaching people, teaching them all the stuff that I was sharing with you and sharing the stuff with them and helping them change their lives with all the stuff that I'd learned and changed my own life with. And I'd reached the point where I had to make a decision, really. And one of the big things I do in all of my work coaching people and in these shows and in the book that's coming out is I like to practice what I preach. So the decision I came to was I wanted to focus on building my coaching business. I'd been changing my life for a few years, especially from a business perspective, and always wanted to create a business that I could run from anywhere. I'd already done some coaching in the past, pure business coaching, and this had moved into a different place. The way the world changed last year at the beginning of lockdowns was, and happens to a lot of people's lives, forced everybody online and forced everybody onto Zoom, which actually creates opportunities. One of the things we'll talk about in the shows that come are the ways in which we interpret what's going on in the world, and what most people will tell you whenever things seem to be awful, and they are obviously awful in many, many ways and have been for a while. There are also opportunities, and there are always opportunities, and we can change our lives whenever we want to, really. So what I decided to do back last year was to focus on building my coaching business. And that led to me thinking, I'm going to stop doing these shows for a while whilst I do that. I did not intend for it to be 12 months until I was back. That's just happened as a result of a few other things. So where that led me to was last summer, deciding A, to focus on the coaching business, and B, to think about a couple of other things. One was whether to travel, because I was thinking to myself, if it wasn't for COVID, what would I be doing? And the answers to that question was travel. And I sat down and thought long and hard about whether it was irresponsible to travel during a pandemic, and what that meant, and what and how I could travel if I wanted to. And the second thing that came up was getting a hair transplant, which I'll tell you a funny story about. The first thing about thinking about getting a hair transplant is, if you want a tip, the best way to get compliments on how much hair you've got is to tell everybody you're going to get a hair transplant when you've still got quite a lot of hair on your head, because it's guaranteed to get you a load of compliments. That's all I got. Basically, every single person I told I was thinking of getting a hair transplant said, "Why do you need a hair transplant?" which was lovely. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. So where that led me to was, after thinking long and hard about it, deciding I could travel. Back then, I'm in the UK, it was legal to travel. There were no sort of red list countries and all that sort of thing. And you could just comply with the laws, basically, and comply with the regulations wherever you went. And that was okay. It's not like I was traveling around too much. So I jetted off back in August last year to Turkey. And the first stop was to get my hair transplant, as I was simultaneously coaching people and testing out the remote element of my work, basically. So seeing if I could go abroad and carry on coaching people around the world, which worked nicely. The hair transplant story is quite funny. So for a few years now, I have been thinking about getting a hair transplant, and as I said, most people would say I didn't need one. My response to that was always, I've known my hair was thinning for a few years. And I always say to people, you don't wait until all your teeth have fallen out to go and get your teeth sorted and to go to a dentist. So why would you wait until all your hair's fallen out to get a hair transplant? For me, it was like a preemptive strike. The best time to get a hair transplant is before you go bald, when you can see it happening. But the backstory to it, which actually ties into me, it's one of the things I actually thought long and hard about before getting a transplant, was one of my big things. In fact, the root of all of the work I do basically comes down to self-worth and self-esteem, and asking whether you're good enough, questioning whether you're good enough. And one of my big dilemmas in it was, well, if I want to get a hair transplant, isn't that me saying I don't feel good enough if I go bald? And the reality is there was an element to that, and there was an insecurity around going bald. But it goes back to an old story, and it's because when I was growing up, I just always thought I'd always have hair. And it was about, I was looking back through emails, and it was about 2016. I started looking in the mirror and thinking, I'm sure my hair's thinning. But I thought to myself, that can't be true. That can't be, because I'm not going to go bald. There's no way I'm going to go bald. So anyway, I thought I'm going to check it out, as I would always do. I'll go and speak to an expert. And I booked in to see a hair transplant specialist in Liverpool. And I went to see this lady, and I very much expected her to look at my hair and say, no, maybe it's thinning a little bit, but nothing to worry about. You're being paranoid. And I'll always remember it. She pinned my hair back, and she took one look at it, and she just went to me, yeah, there's quite a lot of hair loss here. You're receding quite badly. You're thinning out a lot on top, and proceeded to draw on my head like they do in these places, and tell me about all the ways in which I could get a transplant and how much it would cost. And I left that place that day absolutely dumbstruck. And I remember phoning my sister. My sister's 2 years older than me, and I told her this story, and I was laughing at the time. And I said to her, I can't believe that I'm going bald. And I said, do you know why? Do you understand why I'm so shocked? And she went, 100% I know. And this is interesting as well, because it ties into all of the work I do. So loads of what I do, and loads of what we'll talk about going forward. And if you watched or listened to any of the episodes last year, we've already touched on this. Our lives are basically just a series of stories we tell ourselves. And until you start doing work like this and taking down and challenging those stories, that's our reality. But the truth is, most of them are just make-believe, and this is a perfect example of it. So I said to my sister, do you know why I was so sure I would never go bald, and this is such a shock to me? And she said, yeah. I said, why? And she said, because our mum always said to us growing up that the men in our family have great heads of hair. I said, yeah, absolutely, bingo. That I remember her saying it constantly with us growing up. But when this lady said to me I was going bald, it was like someone did a magic trick and clicked their fingers, and like I came out of hypnosis, and all of a sudden I could see the men in my family, including my granddad, my mum's dad, my cousin, and one of my uncles, my mum's brother, all with very thin hair at best, a couple of them bald. And I was like, it's just bullshit. This is just a bullshit story I've believed growing up, that I would never go bald, and that's why it's such a shock to me. And I remember speaking to my mum and saying to her, telling her this story, and I said, and you've always told us the men in our family have got great heads of hair, but that's bullshit. And she said to me, that's not bullshit. What, like, everyone's got great heads of hair? And I said to her, my uncle, your brother, is bald from the crown forward. And she went to me, he is not. And I remember bursting out laughing and thinking, it's a perfect example of all of the stuff we'll get into. So anyway, where that led me to was a place where I wasn't ready to go bald. I was in my late 30s. And last year I was like, do you know what? I spent so much time thinking about this that I'd rather just sort it out, in the same way that if my teeth were bad, I would sort out my teeth. This is something that's important to me. I think about it a lot. I don't care about all of the other stuff. And actually I came to the conclusion that one of the things that would stop me getting it done was what other people would think of me getting a hair transplant, because most people I know who get hair transplants don't talk about it. And I thought, well, actually, all the work I've done in this world that make me feel good enough about myself mean that I'm fine getting a hair transplant. I'm happy to get one and I'm happy to talk about it. So my first stop last year was Turkey. Went to Istanbul, got a hair transplant. It was fantastic, really professional, really good. And then I intend to spend 5 weeks traveling around Turkey whilst things were healing and see some sites and see some ancient sites that I wanted to see. I didn't realise, as I often do, as some of the stories I'll tell you in the weeks to come about some of my adventures over the years, and especially in recent years. In the life I live now, I very much just decide to do things and then go and do them. I do very little preparation. I do very little research. And what that means is I have to accept is I'm often left in situations where I'm sitting somewhere thinking, didn't expect this to happen. That happened to me in Turkey. They told me on the first day that I went to get the transplant that I wouldn't be able to go outside or wear a cap for 2 weeks, which meant I was basically stranded inside a hotel in Istanbul by myself, which was just part and parcel of the adventure. And as I say, something I've got to put up with my life choices, which is fine. There are pros and cons of all the choices we make. From Istanbul, I was coming and going to the UK actually. I came back and again with tests and things like that to make sure it was all safe. Came back for my nephew's birthday, then went off to Spain to stay in a co-living house. And this is when the book started to come together, because I'd already been coaching people. I'd already started to think about things. Something else we'll talk about as the months and the weeks go on is how something I very much believe in now is things joining together and the universe putting things together that are meant to be. And I started, when I got to the co-living place, one of the things that they did inside their community there was everybody had to contribute. So everyone had to do something for the group. And when they asked me what I could do, I said, well, I could talk about what I teach, what I coach people all around the world and how I help people. And they said to me, as we were sitting in the sort of kitchen area while we were talking about this, and they said, well, what would you, if we have to name your session, you do a session every week. I was there for 3 weeks. What would you call it? And just off the top of my head, I said, just to sum up what I do, what would I call it? And I just said off the top of my head, I'd call it how to solve any problem in life. And everybody just sort of turned around and was like, that's a bold statement. And I was like, it is a bold statement, isn't it? But that's what I do. That's literally like the work I do with all of the different people. I always say this, different genders, different races, different nationalities, different sexualities, all coming to me with different problems. Some people with drug and alcohol addictions, some with hating their jobs, some having family problems, relationship problems, all kinds of things, depression, suicidal thoughts. And the work that I do and I coach people on and the work I've done solves all of those things in the same way. It's pretty incredible to witness. So that led to me doing and presenting this work to people, complete strangers, using that title for a few weeks running, and it was popular and people really enjoyed it. And that sort of formed what I thought then would be the title of the book. After that, I went to Mexico and spent an incredible couple of months in Mexico, which I have got plenty of stories to share with you about that. Not least, I did my first, I'm never sure whether you can talk about this stuff actually. So let's say this is just a story, it's make-believe. But hypothetically did experience my first psychedelic plants out there. For a while now, I've been reconnecting with nature and getting back to basics and getting back to what I believe we are meant to be as humans, away from the tech world and being, spending all our time on phones and computers and in front of screens, and more out in nature and reconnecting with the planet that we come from. Ultimately, we are animals, and we will get back. I'll get into all of that in much more detail as we go on as well. But yeah, when I had my first two psychedelic experiences, which were absolutely phenomenal and very difficult to articulate even, but I will share those stories with you as we go on. But that was the first point actually. I was writing the book. This story is in the book itself. I got to a point where I was working with one of the coaches I work with and I'm coached by. And I was thinking to myself, I had a few calls with my own clients where I was asking them whether they were bullshitting themselves all the time. And this comes up a lot, actually, and where your own coaching work is reflected in your own life. And I was asking a few people, they were telling me they were getting stuck on things and they weren't doing things they were saying they wanted to do. And I said, are you just bullshitting yourself? Do you really want to do this? Something I ask people a lot now, and it's a question worth asking yourself. When people talk about procrastination and they can't get going on things and they get stuck, generally speaking, one of the very basic things, forget the bullshit you hear in most of the personal development and self-help worlds. One of the problems usually is we don't really want to do the thing we say we want to do. So a basic question I get people to ask themselves, and you can ask yourself this next time you're saying you're procrastinating about something, is do you really want to do it? And I sat down one night when I was in Mexico and I just said to myself, because I was telling people I was writing this book, but I wasn't really. I'd hardly done anything. This is probably November time last year. And I thought, I just sat down and asked myself, are you bullshitting yourself? Do you want to write this book or not? Because if you want to write it, just start writing it. If you don't want to write it, stop telling everybody you're writing a book and tell everybody you're thinking about writing a book, because that's actually what you're doing. You're spending loads of time thinking about writing a book. And that night I sat down and I started writing because I did want to write it. I was just delaying for a few different reasons that we can get into another time. That led to me, I came home at Christmas. For Christmas, the UK was in lockdown after that, and I actually thought to myself, this is a good time to just sit and concentrate on writing the book. Mexico is fantastic, but it's more difficult to focus on writing a book when you're tempted to go to the beach and go out drinking with amazing cocktails and have a laugh every day. So I thought lockdown would actually be a good opportunity to sit and just get this book written. So since the turn of the year, I sat and I spent a lot of time on my own writing this book. I will get into way more detail in the next episode as to what's in it. It is potentially my greatest achievement. I am very, very proud of what I've produced. It is a lot bigger than I expected it to be. You may know I've written a book before. I wrote a book about changing careers a few years ago, which I was very happy with and I really liked, and it was more of a business venture, that book. It's people like it who've read it and it helps people. This book is more of a passion project. I have put my heart and soul into it. I've actually just had a couple of weeks off because I needed to unplug and detox and de-stress, because I realised, having not had a proper break from coaching people for a full year and putting so much into the book, that it actually took a lot out of me. So it is a big book. It has got everything in it. It basically takes the whole point of it is, for me to work with people one-on-one takes a lot of energy and it costs a lot of money. It's an expensive thing for people to do one-on-one, and there's only so many people I can coach. So I wanted to get this information. I think this information is so valuable, and the stuff I've learned is so valuable and can help so many people, and most people don't have access to it, and most people don't have access to the money that they would need to pay or don't want to pay for coaches, or they don't understand. Lots of the books I've read, lots of the things I've learned over time, I love and have really enjoyed, but can be really dull or really boring or really complicated. And I see one of my roles in life as taking all of this complex information and putting it together in a way that most people will understand and is easier to read or easier to take on board. That's what I've tried to do with this book. And the whole point is to get this information out to as many people as possible for as low a cost as possible. Hence the YouTube channel, hence the podcast. And the book is very low cost. So that's what I've been up to. That's where I've been. That's what's been going on. The book is going to be out by the time this episode goes live. The book is probably going to be out a couple of weeks afterwards. I'm going to start talking about it. Basically, what this show is going to be from now on is me talking from start to finish through the book, walking you through in brief what's in the book. Obviously, it's something like I got the first typeset version of the book back yesterday, which is the book in its real form. It's like 650 pages long. So we're not going to get into loads of detail in the shows. It will be a high level summary to see if you're interested, to see if you like this sort of stuff. The book basically takes you through the whole entire process of what I would do if I was coaching you one-on-one. So it's thousands of pounds worth of value in one, £15 book, whatever it ends up selling at. And it's packed full of information, but also exercises for you to do. We won't do most of the exercises in these shows because it doesn't work as well. You need to sit down and do them. So I will share with you as much as I can through these shows, and you can pick and choose what you like. We will get into various things. I will also intersperse it with stories, and I will also intersperse it with how this applies to the world we're in. I think what goes wrong with a lot of the personal development and self-help world is it doesn't apply. It works in theory. Loads of stuff works in theory. I was speaking to friends this week who'd been reading a parenting book, and they're like, in theory it sounds great, and when they were trying to apply it in practice, it was just awful. So loads of the stuff I'll try to do, and I do in one-on-one coaching, is show you how the theory relates to real life. So I would like you to interact with it. If you have questions, I want you to send questions in, and I can answer things. I can help you solve problems via the medium of the wonderful internet. And if you send things in, we can use them as case studies, so I can show you how the theory and the stuff that's in the book and all of the stuff behind it applies to real life. That's the whole point. So that's it. That's the summary. That's where I've been. I hope you will continue to watch the shows or listen to the shows if you're listening to the podcast. They will be every week, hopefully, from now on, maybe more than one a week. You can follow it. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like, do the usual things, click the notification button. You should be able to get it on any podcast platform that you want to these days. Sign up for the mailing list if you want to get information and further details and be notified when the show's coming out and other things and other bits and pieces. You can go to my website, paul7cope.com, to sign up for that. You can also get the first 4 chapters of the book for free by going to paul7cope.com/free chapters. With the book, as with everything else, I want to make sure that before you spend your hard-earned money buying it, even though it's not very expensive, you can check out whether you like it. You might read my stuff and think it's bullshit and not like it, which is fair enough. Not everyone is going to like it. But you can try it out for free, no strings attached. Read it. There'll be an audio version as well. Check it out. If you don't like it, fuck it off. And that's it. I hope you're well. I hope you're glad I'm back. And I look forward to sharing all of the stuff with you. I'm excited about this book. I'm excited about how much it can help people. So I'll leave it there. I'll see you in the next episode.